You, Madam Public Defender, how are you?
Pretty well, thank you so
very
much.
good, very good. Good to see you here. We have your written testimony, so if you could, just make a brief introduction and then whatever questions we have, okay?
I will definitely do so. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good morning again.
Please. If everybody could be quiet as they leave, please, as we continue our hearing. Thank you. Please.
Good morning again. My name is Keira Bradford Gray, and I am here to testify on behalf of the Defender Association's Fiscal Year 2019 budget appropriation. Alongside with me are Mr. Jim McHugh, who is the First Assistant, as well as Karen Jester, our Chief Financial Officer. So I guess what I sat here through some of the budget testimony, and I heard our DA, Mr. Krasner, and I want to congratulate the city on an effort to bring forth reform in a really meaningful way and bringing a partner that can assist the defender who has been for years advancing criminal justice reform practices. This is now a real opportunity for our city to shrink the size of its system so that it is able to handle the types of cases that it was originally designed for, those that really cause a threat to public safety. And I want to say that the Defender Association, I'm so proud of the work we have done in 2017, where our lawyers have stepped up and gone above and beyond our original mandate to practice law in the courtrooms. We have actually advanced great policy outside of the courtrooms, and I'm waiting on just a few PowerPoints just to kind of demonstrate a few things here. And Jose, you can tell me when you get that ready. So I'll move on until you do.
Sure.
Our office this year has had a number of interesting and creative collaborations around the effort to reform our justice system. One of the, I think most, I apologize, I wanted to see if you can get it.
These things always work slowly, so.
All right, I'll wait for a moment because I wanted to illustrate one of the really amazing partnerships that we've had that help advance some meaningful reform. But until, Jose, you can cue me when you get that together. Until you do, I'll continue on going on.
Okay.
In 2017 alone, we've represented 62,000 people in the city of Philadelphia in different areas of representation. In criminal defense, of course, in adult court, but we've also represented people in the juvenile justice systems as well as the child welfare system. A lot of our work comes from the child welfare system, where we employ about 29 lawyers and 34 social workers to engage in ways to meaningfully treat children who have been deemed to be abused and neglected. Our main mandate is to make sure that the child is safe, but we also work towards goals to advance family reunification. I am happy to say that we have been able to advance better policy with some of the city council. Cindy Bass, for one, she has been looking for us to discuss the impact that the Community Umbrella Agency has on our children. That's the CUA program. We've worked with Helen Gim to look at detention and children in detention and issues surrounding their rehabilitational needs, whether or not they're being met. We've also been able to look outside of the box and look for creative ways to work with our youth that are aging out of foster care. We had the pleasure of working with Councilman Jones this summer and engaging some of our youth in his summer internship program. That was a tremendous experience for some of the foster care youth that we represent, and it gave them an opportunity to explore things that they never had a chance to do. So if Councilman Jones is listening, we hope that he's saving room for us this summer because we are looking for those kids to engage this time. Here's our blueprint, pretty much, for a justice system that achieves 3 goals. And the goals that I'm getting ready to recite are the goals that came out of the Criminal Justice Reform Committee formulated by Council President Clark. One, we should strive to have a system that uses taxpayer dollars the most effective way. We should. I mean, there are a lot of policies and practices that drive the costs that do not make us any safer. And so the Defender Association has been really looking at certain ways and things that we can do to change that. As insiders in this system that represent a whole host of people, we have a lot of informative information about things that drive criminality and things that can exacerbate desperation. So that alone can bring about some really creative partnerships to look for ways to do things better and look for best practices. We should also be looking at a system that is fundamentally fair, meaning trying to reduce the bias as much as we can, making sure that we are collecting information about the disparate treatment in some people in some neighborhoods versus others. And then we should also look for ways to promote public safety. One of the things that we have looked at in terms of what makes people more desperate, and this has come out of work from the Criminal Justice Reform Committee, is the use of our pretrial detention. And pretrial detention means our cash bail system. We've explored numerous models across the country and looked at best practices where people have really implemented a cashless bail system that has done a few things. Saved millions of dollars on taxpayer dollars. It has also promoted a front-end look on services and needs for people that come in contact with police, in contact with our system. And then, of course, it has pretty much created a process of fairness that we can look at individuals for the individuals they are and not just for the paper information that we get generated through a process by which humanity is pretty much wiped out. So our job right now is to put humanization back into this process so we can make the proper decisions. I think we all seen recently with the incident in Starbucks how easy it is to come in contact with the police department, how easy it is to come in contact with the criminal justice system. Under old regimes, I don't know if that petition would have been declined so quickly, because all the DA has is a petition or a police report that speaks to the incident in which the police were involved. If this incident was not caught on tape, I don't know if we would have the general context. And that's what us as public defenders work for every day. We have more information than just the police report, and we seek for ways to bring that to the purview of the decision makers every day. And I can say in our DA, we've had a great partner in understanding this, that as one of the drivers of mass incarceration. We also have a partner in the DA and the courts at looking at reform on the probation and parole end, as looking at that as one of the drivers of mass sentencing. Some of these things can really be reformed by just looking at what we're doing and understanding, is this helping to contribute to public safety, or can we shift those dollars in other places so that we can pretty much stop the cycle of incarceration and stop the cycle that creates a second-class citizenship for some of the people that do come in contact with our system. I do want to just quickly highlight some of the work we've done to advocate for effective cash bail or effective pretrial reform. We have gone out to the communities and done a lot of listening and learning. We have gathered information about the impact that the front end of our system has created for people, losing jobs, losing housing, looking at whether or not families have been shifted around because of a pretrial detention that led to someone being whose case may either be dismissed or they get probation after having sat for about 6 months. We look at the economic impact it has on our city in terms of benefits. I don't think many people understood that once a person goes into jail after a certain period of time, their public benefits are shut off. That means the state stops paying and the city picks up the bill. I think we had on our Criminal Justice Reform Committee a presentation by the prisons in which one of the prison personnel gave us a figure that it costs about $30 million to provide either medical care or drug care in the prisons alone. If we look at focusing on the front end of needs and servicing needs on that front end, we can keep those benefits activated and use these community resources that are already set up, that are already funded in a much better way before people do become much more desperate, and it makes their rehabilitation and reentry that much harder. So we have been focusing on a real practical analysis. We work with the people, we work with the communities, we are on the ground. I always say that our criminal justice system is like a hand. You know, it takes all 5 of us to really make this effective, and I talk about the DA, the public defender, the courts, law enforcement, and probation. If one finger is missing, the system doesn't run as efficiently. Us as the public defender office, our mandate is to work for people in the courtrooms, but I am proud of the ladies and gentlemen of that office that have stepped up to the challenge and gone above and beyond that have taken the information and knowledge that we gain through our practical services in the trial room and said that we can join forces with city council, we can join forces with community groups, and we can join forces with national entities to really bring out a meaningful change in our system. The work that we have done here in our system over the last year has been remarkable. We have looked at ways to not only advance meaningful reform, but we have looked at ways to tap into certain resources that can bring a higher platform to what we're trying to do. We recently looked at teaming up with the Players Coalition. The Players Coalition is pretty much made up of NFL players, and they have been looking for ways to join forces with those in the system and outside of the system to advance meaningful reform. So right now, we had an opportunity to engage them in a meaningful way, and we also brought our NFL commissioner, Roger Goodell, to the city of Philadelphia, where we looked at bail practices and talked about other areas of reform that were happening in other cities and other jurisdictions. The Players Coalition has now decided to advance a cash bail reform, the reform of a cash bail system. They have used what we've done here in Philadelphia and other cities as a model to advance that reform. So I applaud the efforts of what we've been able to do and how we've been able to capture their attention to this issue. They recently had a huge funding effort and initiative for meaningful reform that we're hoping to bring into the city of Philadelphia as we discover and explore our opportunity to promote a day reporting center that would go hand in hand with cash bail reform. It actually is a necessity. If we are going to reform our bail system and rely less on cash bail, we do need a reporting center that has services that are readily available that can be accessed at that front entry. And lastly, in terms of what we've been doing on cash bail and what we've been doing in promoting better reform, we have captured the attention of our national organization, to which they are now going to bring their conference, their national conference, here to Philadelphia to hear more about what we've been doing. And we will be getting a special recognition for our city council's efforts, as well as our criminal justice stakeholders' efforts to reduce our prison population. Some of our efforts that go on inside of the courtroom have been working with the mass amount of people we work with on a one-on-one basis to look at ways to advance some of the epidemics that are going on in the city. We are looking at ways to work with the youth that are charged with gun offenses. Not that they've used them, but like Larry Krasner had testified early in his testimony, these are people that feel like they're in communities that may be over-policed and unprotected, and when something happens, they make rash decisions about their safety. These are kids between the age of 18 to 24 that have never had a conviction before, but have very little options, so they feel, to deal with some of the issues that are going on in their neighborhood. So we have used these organizations that have been designed to help those kids in those type of situations to make better decisions. So when we come into contact with a kid that is being charged with a gun offense, that has not figured out what to do with them, that is not violent, that is not engaged in any violence, and is using it for their mistaken belief that it will provide safety, we are teaming them up with organizations such as Ceasefire. We are teaming them up with organizations that can provide that understanding to help the kid work through those problems and give parents some access to resources to deal with those. So this is how we do that in addition to our legal representation. And I think that is really a really great model to team up with to advance the city's goals. We have used opportunities to enhance our social service support in our delivery model. We have looked at our probation and parole community and what makes up the opportunity for people to go back into jail on violations, and we've tried to intervene where possible, saving the city millions of dollars, but also saving a needless, incarceration for those who are trying to find ways to improve their lives. We looked at bringing the services that are already provided through the city's funding in the communities to the criminal justice system, and that has really saved a long waiting period for services to be accessed. Instead of a 6 to 8 waiting period, we now do same-day services, and we have 33 judges that are really supportive of that effort and use it continuously. We serviced over 608 people this year, and thereby saving $2.9 million. So I think that is just little things that we can do in looking at our services and how we can bring forth creative ideas to help advance the city's goal and help reduce the reliance on our criminal justice system to solve all of our problems. Our reentry costs, the same way. Our office works really hard to help improve reentry. We do early parole petitions by tapping into the resources that the city provides and putting a plan before judges who either accept them or deny them. To date, in 2017, we have done 1,163 early parole petitions, 87% of which were granted, and so it resulted in a net savings of jail time of 69,780 days, which calculated into dollars is over $8 million. So I think that is a really valuable resource that the Defender can provide. We not only do that for Defender clients, but we do that for the entire city. So the city does not have to appoint counsel to do so. We have taken on that initiative. We also do things in terms of reducing barriers to our client community. We have done a number of community expunger clinics, but I don't think many people know that we do expungements daily, well, I should say Monday through Friday, in our office. This year alone, we filed 4,968 petitions, some of which were juvenile. We even created a juvenile hotline to understand the opportunities to get expungements in our juvenile justice system. But for the most part, we have been really ramped up our adult criminal record expungement process by using some of the generators that have been created by our community legal services. It has been a game changer in how many we were able to do during a day and during a community outing event. And lastly, because we are working for the people, we work on behalf of the people, we work directly with those impacted by the criminal justice system, we have been taking our engagement to another level. We have recently engaged on an initiative that brings forth information to people to help them understand how to navigate the court system. This saves on costly failure to appear warrants that would ordinarily be gained when people don't understand that one case, you would have to come to court at least 8 times for one case. That is a shocker for people who don't understand this system. And so we work with communities to help them understand the process. We have recently created a community hub by using Mothers in Charge, where they are opened every Tuesday night, and people from the community come just to get help, to get information, to understand how can they be better participants in their own defenses. This is an empowerment tool that has really been great to help get better outcomes for people who have that story to tell, but feel like they don't know how to do it properly. We have recently reached out and received a grant of over $500,000 to create more hubs in the city of Philadelphia because the Stoney Foundation understands the value of that service. We want to thank all of our city council members for what we've been able to do to have meaningful community engagements in terms of providing information tables, in terms of providing supports, in terms of providing expungement clinic help, in terms of just anything that the city is trying to advance with respect to how the criminal justice system has an impact on communities. We have been there, we have stepped up, we've provided data and information that really support these efforts. So with that, I will welcome any questions that council may have.
Okay, thank you very much. I think you'll know for the record, Councilman Jones running in here because he wanted to make sure he got here as part of this presentation. And thank you very much for all you do. I do want to know for the record, I see one former council member sitting over there, former Councilman George Burrell. Mr. Burrell, good to see you here. Thank you.
Good to see you too.
Just a couple of quick questions. I know pay parity is always going to be an issue, and I think a lot of us are certainly supportive of that. But on that end, we kind of know the disparity between the defender, the DA, but what is the average pay for defenders in Philadelphia compared to other cities? You have
so we did give that slide last year, and I don't have it this year, but I can go back and make sure that I give it to you. I know that when we did put it up for major cities, Philadelphia was at the bottom. I can't tell you the exact number, but I remember that was the illustration that we had.
I kind of remember that too. And along that same line, how many clients does the average attorney represent, and how does that compare, say, either with other cities or with a recommended caseload?
Now, the recommended caseloads, we are over the recommended caseloads. And I really will be fair. I believe that most public defender offices around the country are facing those same issues. I will say that Philadelphia is trying to get better, and the policies and practices that we're putting in place are shrinking that system, shrinking the need for our involvement, which is always a great thing. Right now, our lawyers in our misdemeanor courts are handling about 686 cases. The national average is about 400, so we're almost 300 cases per lawyer over the national average. But with some of the policies that we're putting in place and practices that we're putting in place, we're hoping to find better ways to deal with our low-level offenses versus coming into our court system and clogging up the caseloads of our trial lawyers.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. All right, it's Councilman Sanchez and Councilman Jones. Councilman Sanchez?
Yeah, I had to get in here before him.
Yeah, I saw you hit that button as he was running in, so you wanted to beat him, I know that.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, and thank you for being such a wonderful partner in our Justice League, what I call our Justice League portfolio. We really appreciate all of the community outreach and expungement clinics and everything else that you've done that goes way beyond the regular work. Want to get to the issue of your budget, right? Because last year you did a very thorough presentation and asking us to help you lift the professional standards of the office. And I noticed this year again, once again, you are not receiving the request to the budget office. The $258,000 that you're requesting that just keeps you whole, let alone what you ask. What was the response of the administration to that request?
I did get an email from Brian Abernathy on Friday who said that they did put that into our budget, the budget that's going to be presented to City Council. That's the $258,000.
That just keeps you whole. But last year, again, you came up with a plan at many of our requests about what's your vision. You were new. We wanted to make sure we were going to be supportive because we knew you were going to be a strategic partner in saving us other money. As it related to the initial request for the 2.4 that you got less of, what are we not doing that you could be doing had you been receiving that money?
Thank you for that question. So what we have been able to do with some of the money received is we've been able to retain more experienced lawyers. We actually have looked and we retained 33% more than we had over the past years. I think what we can do by putting that extra $800,000 that we asked for the original $2.4 million is save even more experienced lawyers so that we can do even more of the work we just described. Taking on, our office takes a lot of pride and effort into training lawyers. And then after 3 years, those lawyers are gone and recycled through City Council, through to the DA's office, and other areas that they think that they can make a more robust salary and living. But I really think that the effort that City Council and the Mayor's office had given our office showed that if people see a little bit of value coming their way, it goes a long way in terms of service delivery.
You mentioned during your presentation the issue of day reporting centers as a valuable addition to what we're looking to do. But you've been out in the community, and the siting of all of these types of services is quite challenging, right? Yes. I inherited 3 jails and constantly negotiating with the community, their existence there. One of the concerns that I've always expressed to all of the administrations has been, how do we cite these in the least disruptive way? And volume always seems to be one of them. What are any of the national best practices that you've seen about the number, right? Because anytime you have 1,000 people reporting daily, that's problematic, right? So have you, in your work nationally, seen what are some of the best practices around how to be as least disruptive as possible, but include them within the framework of our neighborhoods?
Thank you. Some of the models I've been able to explore through working on the Criminal Justice Reform Committee include release in jurisdictions who've gone to a no cash bail system and how they look at their release practices. I would say this: there are some people that are going to come into contact with our systems that do not need to use a day reporting center. Right. And I would say intentionally understanding who would need supports and who would not need supports is going to be a major decision in terms of how many people are going to be funneling through that system. I've recently
So the name daily reporting doesn't necessarily mean they're doing daily reporting physically?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And it doesn't mean that everyone who comes into contact with our system will be using that. There are going to be levels of, I guess, needs. There are going to be low needs where those people don't even really need to be reporting daily, but they need to make their obligations to come to court. There are going to be moderate needs where they may need to check in with a daily reporting center, and then there are going to be high needs where they may need a little bit more services. There are going to be those who are going to be detained because they present a risk to public safety, and that will be explored through a meaningful hearing. So I think when we're looking at day reporting centers, we're looking at fractions of our population who would ordinarily be in jail on bail because we don't have anything else to do with them, that will be utilizing this. And it's a lot less than thousands of people per day.
So last question, and I know if Councilman Green was here, would ask it. So we've been looking at all of the different buckets and services, referral by courts for folks using marijuana. Is the system really reforming? Do we still have a large number of folks being referred for treatment for marijuana? Yeah. What, if anything, do you know about how much money we spend testing people for marijuana if we're decriminalizing? So your opinion on that.
I'm glad you asked that question. I do agree with the district attorney. I think that we need to look at where we are now. And I know that's a touchy subject in terms of marijuana, but if we're looking at the studies and the effects of marijuana, I don't see the dangerousness level where we should be so concerned that we're willing to spend millions of dollars to test and therefore reincarcerate people for the usage. I think that, that most of the people on our probation system get tested, and that test costs money. I don't have that quantified, but if we look at the 44,000 people on probation, I think we can get an understanding of how much that may cost us to test. The incarceration of those who have used marijuana while on probation costs us money. And just like a long time ago when alcohol was outlawed and we looked at whether or not it made more sense to regulate it versus criminalize it, I think that we're looking in that direction now with marijuana and the effects of marijuana. I don't think children should be using it, but just like alcohol, children can't drink. I don't think people should use it in public places. Just like alcohol, it's illegal to use it in a public place. But I think if we regulate it effectively, we can really get rid of an arbitrary policy that drives our incarceration rate and drives our dollars.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And the reason I ran in here was not because of Jess, Ms. Gray, but my legislative director loves this department above all other departments, and she prepared these questions, and had I not put these questions on the record, I would not have been able to go to my office. So, good afternoon. That's why I ran.
Good afternoon,
I was in with the president on another criminal justice matter, but once they texted me and said you were on, I had to jump in here. So, let me just memorialize that I believe when we, Councilman Greenlee and Councilman Green, took a deeper dive tour maybe 2 years ago to your department, all of us left out there with a sense of surprise as to how much the Defenders Association and your staff actually do from the beginning of the process to the post-end of the process. So much so that the president of this council appointed you co-chair for the Criminal Justice Reform Committee.
Yes, I thank you for that.
And we took a deeper dive into this process. It was amazing to me, Councilman Burrell, that we got a piece of, no, it was actually 7 pieces of paper when we first started this that showed all of the possible outcomes of a person who was arrested and what different variables could have happened. I had no idea as to the level and complexity of what the criminal justice system was and actually the role you play in it. I can simplify this by saying you see them, and when I say them, individuals who wind up in this system early on. When you're their advocate, when they've been abused or when they had some trouble with the juvenile justice system and have indicators that this may, in the future, without intervention, without programs, may be a problem for us in adulthood. All you have to do is go to the Defenders app. A lot of people, I don't know if you said that in your presentation, there's a Defenders app that shows not only what you do, but the agencies that you serve as a referral to send people to for all kinds of help, and rating them as to the responsiveness, the effectiveness, and cost effectiveness to some degree of those programs. That all we had to do was look at this blueprint and get a better understanding of what you, like the defenders, like the district attorney, and like the courts, came in here 5 years ago telling us what we could do to reduce the population on State Road and what we could do to be more efficient. And the one thing that I took from what you, Justice McCafferty, the old district attorney, and others, was that this was the kind of issue, whether you're the most conservative member in council and did not care about saving souls but cared about saving tax dollars, you could get behind because you could quantify the savings to the system. Or whether you were the most liberal member of counsel, and I won't say who's one or the other, but they could also subscribe to what you're doing because they were getting those type of results by way of programs that you're pushing.
Yeah.
So I haven't asked a question yet because I know a lot of the answers, and I just want this body to know that this is some of the best dollars we could possibly spend. We spend 1/3 of our budget on public safety. And until we address those cost savings, we will not save. You can count all the paper clips you want. You will not realize those deep savings in city government and its costs, not just direct costs, but indirect costs to society that you do. One of the things that was the inspiration of us looking at a criminal justice reinvestment fund, because what we haven't gotten right is that you'll come up with all of these programs that actually, if we could quantify them better, save us millions and millions of dollars. But when those savings are realized, it doesn't go back to you, not a percentage of it. It goes to the general fund where we do snow removal. And snow removal is important to my constituents. But preventing people from entering the justice system, and you coined a phrase which I use, and I don't plagiarize anything. I say where I got it. Instead of reentry, thinking about pre-entry.
That's right.
There it is right there, pre-entry.
Yes.
And looking at the things, causal relationships, like there are 48 zip codes in the city of Philadelphia. 11 of them house 90% of the inmates on State Road. 11 zip codes, 90% of the population. Yet, we closed in those same zip codes 23 schools. The rooster crowed, the sun came up. Did the rooster cause the sun to come up? I don't care. We just need to correct the situation. So when we start looking at those things and looking at what you can do to create pre-entry, when you see it in a DHS case, when you see that a child has been abused, and we know every indication is that their outcomes are going to be worse once they get in foster care, and it leads to sometimes a jail cell, that we could intervene here and create pre-entry. So I guess I'll ask a question now, because I didn't hear the bell.
Right.
And my colleague, only reason Councilman Greenlee did not push the timer is because he's long been a defender of the Defenders
We do
Association.
know that. We thank him for
And
that.
he's just.
I am a supporter, but the clock is on, sir. Just to let you know.
So a couple of quick things. The 500 young people that were lifers,
Yes.
an added responsibility you now have, along with the district attorney, is to look at those life sentences and then renegotiate those sentences. Can you explain that, and how much does that cost you?
Mr. Jim McHugh is the supervisor of that unit.
300 of those 500 are Philadelphians, correct?
Yes, that's right, Councilman. Our office represents approximately 205 of the 300 directly. We represent them. Of those...
What do you mean represent them?
What we do is our lawyers are experts in this area. They are experts in the development of the juvenile brain, and they're experts in the area of rehabilitation. And also we have mitigators in our office that are also experts in this area. They go out, they gather the information on each and every one of these cases. They get the information as to before the case occurred, when they were juveniles. They also get the information when they're incarcerated, the many, many years and decades that they've spent in prison. Gather that information, and you heard the district attorney earlier today talk about how he's saving millions of dollars by bringing forth offers that he say are lower than the previous administration. The reason he's able to do that, the way that those offers are accepted in court and justified in court, is because the Defender Association attorneys and mitigators are bringing the information to support those offers and to support those sentences. So our office stepped up when the Miller decision came down, and we formed a unit, and we have handled over 205 of these cases, and of the other 100 that we're not handling because of conflicts, we have assisted in recruiting counsel that will handle the cases pro bono, so no cost to the city, and we've trained those counsel in the city. So in a sense, we are saving the city a lot of money in the pro bono cases. As far as what is the cost is around $800,000 to $900,000 a year for that unit to operate.
Have you included that in your budget?
Yes, we have.
In addition, you do a lot more than that. That reentry and mindset, and someone who has spent 20 years in jail, who went in before the internet was established, has come out to a great many changes, physical, mental, and understanding that some of these juvenile lifers, when they walked through the prison gates, were preyed upon. The older inmates did all kinds of targeting of these individuals who have had to manage through that. There's some sociological psychology that goes on to that reentry that you are doing or working with others to do. Is that correct?
That's correct. We work, first of all, to try and find employment for them. We connect them with their families, with services in the community. We do all of that to try and ease the reentry. We also, on a monthly basis, we host at our office a gathering for all the juvenile lifers, and each month this gathering gets bigger and bigger as more are released, where they can meet and they can work out problems themselves. It's kind of a safe place that we host every month in our office.
I'm going to yield to my colleagues, I see, but I want to make one statement. 3 years ago, when President Clark created this committee, we were barely listening to this whole restorative justice model of criminal justice. Today, last week, we announced the closing of the House of Corrections. 34% reduction in the census on State Road. And I said before, I'll say again, the rooster crowed, the sun came up. Did the rooster cause the sun to come up? I don't care. We closing the House of Correction. Mr. President.
I like that. That's an awesome saying, sir. It's going to Councilman Jones' fables. We're going to with a name for those things. Thank you. Chair recognizes Councilman Taubenberger.
Thank you.
Council President, thank you very much, and Councilman Jones, thank you. You have actually taught me quite a bit, and I make note of what you say here. And I thank you for your comments on history. I hope I've helped a little bit on that, but it's great serving with you. No question, but a comment. I want to thank you and your staff, the Defenders Association, to all the hard work you do. It doesn't always get recognized, and I know sometimes you get beat up by a lot of people from a lot of different places, but I think you and your staff are an essential part of democracy.
Thank you.
To have representation for someone that maybe can't afford it, and having someone there to give voice to their position, to what happened to them, I think is essential to democracy. And from this councilman, and I'm sure my sentiments are shared by many here, I just want to thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much, Councilman.
Council President, thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Chair recognizes Councilman Jones again.
Well, I just want to ask a couple of quick questions. Which of the programs that you deal with or know about, some of the alternatives to incarceration, have in the past generated the most cost savings? And this is for Alan Dom, who would want to ask that question. And then which of the ones that are being proposed have the greatest amount of potential for saving taxpayers' dollars?
So one of the programs that we utilize that is currently in place is the Choice is Yours program, and that is a program that's sponsored by JEVS, and that really takes those who have a hard time understanding what their opportunities for real economic stability are, and it takes them out of the realm of being incarcerated where they're only going to come out with the same skills. It puts them in a newly, skill-based course where they look at options and actually get jobs and generate some tax revenue for the city. So that has been a really, really good program for the epidemic of low-level drug dealing offenses. I would think that one of the programs that we are pushing is a model of pre-entry, one that goes hand in hand with bail reform. Bail reform and bail practices have driven mass incarceration, have driven costs needlessly. When we're looking at some of the things that we're doing right now in the area of bail reform, we're looking at how many cases get dismissed, how many people get found not guilty who would have originally sat in jail for 6 to 8 months for no reason, losing so much, and coming back out to a community where they are more desperate and more likely to reoffend. So I think that if we're looking at the model of servicing people on the front end, we have to remember, these services are already in our community. You guys pay for these services already in our community. Unfortunately, we don't connect people with them until it's too late, until they're coming back out of prison. And that is the wrong time to connect people. We need to be doing that early on as an intervention plan, and we need to be putting forth information to the decision makers, whether it be a DA or a judge, about the path that a person is currently on and whether or not it's working. And do they need to stay in this system to get what they need in order to turn their life around? And I think when we look at the populations that come in here, we can see a population size of good 30% of our cases that do not need to be brought into this system to deal with their challenges. And so I think that we are seeing this more and more now as a household discussion based on cell phone traction, that people come in this system so easily and we have to work like crazy to get them out. But if we're looking and making intentional decisions on what our system should be handling, I think we're going to see a lot more opportunities to use community resources, community organizations. I'm not just talking about treatment organizations. I'm talking about we have built kind of a conglomerate around pre-entry based on what we learned from from the reentry movement. And we have used community resources of these unsung heroes in communities, such as Dad University, Mothers in Charge, to really service the needs of our client base much better than the prison cell and, unfortunately, the prison guards can do.
My last question, Mr. President, and I promise I could go all day, and you know I can.
I know.
But I won't.
He has immersed himself in criminal justice. I want to thank Councilman Jones for all he has done, as well as you, Council President Clark. I think with the Criminal Justice Reform Committee, we've gotten a chance to know each other and learn each other so much that we can engage in real meaningful opportunities to advance criminal justice reform. And without this opportunity, I don't think I would have been able to do that. So I do thank you.
So every time in the barbershop when somebody says, "Oh man, Arlen got a public defender," I'm saying to them, "You're lucky."
Yeah.
Like you have no idea what marshaled resources you have. My last question is this. Mental health issues of the incarcerated population, it came to my gravity and orbit. How many people really need a bed up in Norristown as opposed to a cell on State Road? How is that evolving in your mind? And I heard that we may be getting more resources to do that.
Yeah, so when I came on, we worked with the ACLU from Pittsburgh on a lawsuit that really kind of sued the state to force them to provide resources here in Philadelphia for the population of people that were sitting in jail for mental health, purely mental health reasons, waiting to be rehabilitated. That lawsuit had created a settlement where the Department of Welfare was supposed to provide more community-based resources to free up beds in Norristown. We are currently in the process of looking at how that's going and whether or not they fulfilled their commitment to provide a certain amount of resources to that effort. I don't have that information with me now, but I could go back and make sure that our partners at the ACLU have the data that you're requesting and send that to you.
Mr. President, hopefully our good friend and former councilman on Inside Story will chronicle the success of 34% reduction in inmate population on State Road and the historic closing of a prison based on a collaborative effort, which is unique in government and might be the inside story. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman. I hope none of the Channel 6 viewers are watching this testimony, So yeah, it's kind of like out there now, but there's no reason why you shouldn't include that as your inside story. Thank you, Councilman. Appears to be all the questions. I want to thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you so much,
All right.
Councilman. And I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about the work that we're doing at the Defender
Absolutely.
Association.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.